Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the GD Report. I am D.
You sure you're D? I thought I was
I
D.
am no, you're confused, my friend. You're G. I am D.
Well, I am older than you, so you know. So yeah,
Hey,
I guess I'm G.
am I supposed to respect my elders and let you be who you want to be?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Awesome. Well, hey, what's great to see everybody. Hope everybody's doing well out there. Everybody's staying healthy. We've got a little bit of a spike of the Omicron and the some of the variations, but the cool thing about it is if you're vaccinated and boosted, you can, it's pretty much like having the flu, kind of like they said at the first, people that denied it, but hope everybody's being healthy. I do know we have some cases of monkeypox coming up around.
Yeah, lots.
So, yeah, pretty wild times. But anyway, hope everybody's doing well. Everybody's hanging in there. It is a busy time right now in the political season. So, G-Man, let's go to DC and let's talk about what's happening tomorrow night. Big hearing tomorrow night, right?
Yeah, there's something going on there. Let me put my thinking cap on. Oh yeah, the January 6th committee is going to air their hearings in prime time. And here's a big shocker. Fox News is not going to carry it.
Now, they're going to carry it on Fox Business, I think.
Yeah, but who's going to watch that? Nobody's going to turn that in.
Fox Business it is.
Yeah,
and Laura Ingraham said she kind of said the quiet part out loud, because she said that that their audience is not interested in it, so they're going to just focus on what their audience wants to listen to, which is not objective at all, but that's the way it is, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, their audience does not care that Donald Trump tried to overthrow the government and stay in power. They don't care. In fact, they would have liked it if he had succeeded. Because to them, that's what this country needs. I was thinking the other day, I was looking through the internet and just, some groups that I'm on, and it's just amazing to me how the right has hijacked the word patriot. So if you're a right winger, you're a patriot. But if you're a liberal, you're trash. You can't be a patriot. You hate the country. And it's just amazing to me how they do that. Hop down.
Yeah, it is pretty wild how they've co-opted that word and tried to make it their own, and it's so far from the truth in reality. So anyway, we'll have that hearing tomorrow night. It'd be interesting to see. One of the challenges I think for that committee is they've talked about how there's going to be bombshell information. There's going to be all this interest. You've got 30% of the country that are diehard Trump supporters, that you could tell them that they could come with scientific proof that Donald Trump is the reincarnation of Adolf Hitler, and they wouldn't care.
Yep.
They would still vote for him, support him, everything like that. That was one of the things he said in his campaign, when he said he could kill somebody on Fifth Avenue and he wouldn't lose one supporter. He was dead right.
Yeah, he was. And for 30%, now that number keeps going down because his influence, which you and I talked about this a while back. I said it was starting to wane, and it is. So they're starting, like some people ran that didn't get his endorsement, and they won their races in the primaries yesterday. His influence on the party, as one Republican pollster said, right now you'd rather have his endorsement than not, because endorsement will help you. But if you don't get it, you can still win.
Right. Yeah. So we'll see how this committee hearing goes tomorrow night. But I think there's a chance to make a strong case to the rest of the country that 70% is paying attention with some of the new information that they have. But we'll see how it goes. We'll see if it rivets the country the way that the Watergate hearings did.
Well, they're already saying that it won't. But I noticed some of the Democrats have said there's some blockbuster information coming out. There's, I noticed today there was a story about how the Secret Service was trying to figure out a way to get Trump to the Capitol, so he could lead the charge. I think what we're going to find out is that there was a concerted effort to overthrow the government. B, Donald Trump and his minions in the White House were leading the way. I think that this latest indictment of the Proud Boys leadership is going to end up bearing fruit. And I think eventually, I know a lot of Democrats are, kind of perplexed at the slowness of Merrick Garland. But I think eventually we're going to see some high-level indictments of people in the Trump administration. It may be in year 3 of the Biden administration, but I think we're going to see it.
Yeah, well, I think it's an understatement that people are upset with the slowness of Merrick Garland. I mean, this guy continues to just drag his feet.
Yeah. Yeah, but I read an article yesterday, I think it was on Politico, that basically said, he's an old school prosecutor and he's building his case from the ground up, which I think most of us are under the impression that you could build a case either way, from the middle to the top and middle down, or from the top down, because there's a lot of evidence there. But he's old school, and so he's going to do it from, get the low level guys to roll on the guys above them, and get those guys to roll on the guys above them, and then eventually you get the big fish. So we'll see how it goes. But and I think Donald Trump, if you watch what he's saying, I think he knows that it's coming. And he's lost a couple of more sessions, rounds with Letitia James, the AG in New York.
He's gonna, unless the Supreme Court of New York steps in, he and Don Jr. and Ivanka are gonna have to testify in front of her for a civil case. So
yep. So he's got to. I said when he got elected that he would rue the day that he decided to run, and I know why he ran. All the books that have come out basically have said he ran to try and get his name back out there and generate some buzz for the family business, never thinking that he would win. The night of the election, when it came out that he won, Melania, thanks. Cried, because she didn't want to go to the White House. She thought it was going to be a burden. And if you'll remember, she and Barron stayed in New York for a long time. So, I think it's gonna end badly for him and his supporters. So, and I think the GOP realizes it, and we'll see how the midterms go. I mean, everybody's still saying, it's going to be a bloodbath for the Democrats. And I do think if gas doesn't come down, that it's going to be a hard row for the Democrats, because you can tout whatever you've accomplished, and if you don't get gas prices down, that's what people think. They think I'm paying 80, 90, $100 a tank, and I got to fill my tank up every 2 weeks, and that's hitting my pocketbook, and that's how they're going to vote. They're going to vote for change to try and fix that. So
no, I'm with you, and it's a challenge right now because of the economy. But it's always funny to me how gas prices go up when there's a Democratic president, and there's a Republican president. They always highlight the fact that the president can't affect gas price.
Yeah. Well,
so how is it?
Well, if there's one industry, and we've talked about this before, if there's one industry that can affect who gets elected, it's the oil and gas industry. Despite what environmentalists want to think, I mean, those guys hold a lot of sway, and if they stop drilling, which they've pretty much done, Now, whether they did that because there's nothing to drill, or they were mad at Biden for closing off the leases on the public lands, I don't know. But once they turn off the spigot and gas goes up, that can really affect how your administration goes. So he's done a couple of things. One I don't really agree with. He basically relented and allowed them to go back onto public lands to drill. Republicans are all in favor of that. And my guess is most of those don't go to public lands, but those of us that do go to national parks and things like that. We don't want to see oil derricks, working on the land. We'd like to see it pristine like God created it. But the other thing he did is he went to the Saudis kind of hat in hand and got them to, made nice with them, and they're going to open up the spigots. So here in the next 3 months, my guess is we're going to see gas come down pretty dramatically. And then after Labor Day, it always comes down anyway. I mean, the oil companies always claim something to jack up the price right at the summer driving season, and then it goes down at the end. So
without a doubt. And, I think the challenge is, I know that one of the things they're considering is a trip to Saudi Arabia.
Right.
To talk about gas prices, and there's definitely challenges with the way that we've depended on a world market on Russia for oil production.
Right.
So with the Ukrainian conflict, there's definitely a challenge when it comes to that. So, there's always, like you've talked about many times, there's a lot of indicators, and gas price is one of them, that it's really out of the president's control, but it's one of the things that people vote on.
Yeah, it's hard to make the electorate realize that, the guy sitting in the White House, as Teddy Roosevelt said, doesn't have a lot of power except for the bully pulpit. And so, Truman basically used the power of the federal government to get things done, where he threatened to nationalize the railroads and things like that. But, at the end of the day, there's not really a whole lot of stuff that the president can do. So,
yeah, there's Biden's tried to open the oil reserves and things like that, but at the end of the day, it's not going to have that much of an impact if the oil companies aren't going to adjust their pricing.
Yeah.
And they have an inordinate amount of control, and maybe that's why we're looking at more. When you look at the auto manufacturers, one of the big things they're pushing, obviously, right now is electronic vehicles, and so electric vehicles. So we'll see how that production affects the oil prices. But in the meantime, you couple that with inflation, and there's a lot of economic challenges when it comes to the Biden administration. So,
but here's what Americans need to realize. So as you know, I have contacts all around the globe, and I heard from one of my contacts in Kenya today, and she was basically saying that it's really bad. I mean, she's not, she doesn't see how people are surviving. It's so bad. And then one of my other friends in Ethiopia said the same thing. So this inflation isn't just in America. I mean, it's all over the globe. So we're not the only people hurting. We're just the ones bitching about it the most.
That's a great point, because one of the things that one of my friends in the UK reminded me of is that gas in the UK is like the equivalent of $8 per gallon.
Right.
Which Joe Biden has no effect on gas prices in the UK. So.
Yeah, I was just going to Google. So, the current gas price in Canada, so all you have to do is cross the border, is $8.49 a gallon. So $8.50 a gallon for gas, because they're on the liter system, and and they've always paid more for gas than us. And you rarely hear them complaining about gas. So
Well, part of the thing about gas prices is, in the grand scheme of things, it should be higher because you should be discouraging people from driving as much, because you should have a public transportation system that would support the population, which is another area that we've fallen down dramatically on in the United States, because every time we try to pass speed rail or light rail, anything like that, it always comes up against opposition, because the oil companies don't want us taking trains, they want us taking cars. It ought to be, I ought to be able to get on a train, tonight and come see you in Denver and be able to be there in about 3 or 4 hours because of a speed train. It ought to be, it exists.
Which you can do that in Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah. And parts of Europe, you can do that. You can go country to country in just a little bit. And you can go from London to Paris in about 2.5 hours through the channel.
Right.
So, yeah, America has a lot of things it needs to fix. So, and with the gridlock in Congress, it's not really getting fixed. So,
yeah, and I saw a great stat last night, because there was a ton of primaries last night. I think more primaries yesterday than any other day, on the calendar year. And Katie Porter was running for re-election in California, and her district had been kind of reconfigured because of redistricting. Katie Porter got more votes in her primary election than the sitting U.S. senator did in Utah, or in the state of Wyoming, Loomis. And so, it just shows the imbalance when it comes to the population versus the representation.
Yep.
And so when you've got a congresswoman in one district in California getting more votes than a U.S. senator gets in one whole state, it shows the imbalance. And we're going to have to eventually address those kinds of things, not just electoral college reform, but we're going to have Senate reform of some kind, because states like Utah and South Dakota and where I live, Oklahoma, shouldn't have 2 senators compared to California.
Right. Well, there's been calls for California and Texas to be broken up into 5 states. So, if you did that in Texas, you'd end up with 4 senators that are Democrat and 6 senators that are Republican. So
it just depends who does the break. It just depends who does the breaking up.
Yeah, that's true. But I think there are some, eventually you would hope that the American electorate would get smart and look at things. And so from where I sit, I see a lot of problems that need to get fixed. So we have an infrastructure problem. Now, we did pass some legislation, not enough, but we passed some legislation to address that. So the most severe cases are going to get dealt with, but our roads and bridges are decaying at a fast rate. They need to be replaced. Our pipelines and the country's full of them, are decaying. They need to be replaced. We need a water plan to take water from the east, where they get it in abundance and it just runs off into the ocean, to bring it to the west. We need a transportation plan like we had in the 1800s when they were trying to connect the continent. And we've seen what happens when the Republicans control the government and all facets of it. Nothing happens. We've seen what happens when the Democrats and the Republicans are split. Nothing really happens. So it's time to let the Democrats have a shot. They talk a big game. They say they want to do this and that. The American people ought to have the backbone to elect them, let them do what they say they're going to do. And if not, vote them out and go back to how it's been and just live with this deadlock. But
yeah,
you need to do something.
Yeah, the other option would be, because we're facing such a challenge when it comes to authoritarianism, and let's be honest, we are facing fascism and authoritarianism head on right now.
Oh, absolutely.
We got people like Ron DeSantis. Look at the things he's doing in Florida, where he's trying to punish private businesses with the tools of the state government. And,
Yep.
for all the complaints that conservatives have about, federal government overreach, can you imagine what a President DeSantis would do? I mean, he's punishing he cut back on some kind of tax break that the Tampa Bay Rays got because they tweeted out a message in support of gun safety regulations.
Yeah.
And he did the same thing where he's trying to be punitive towards Disney. And so as we're facing those kinds of things, we really need to have people step up and have almost a government that is formed where Democrats welcome in, Republicans who have good intentions, Republicans who have the will to keep
the Lincoln Project guys.
Yeah, a representative government in place and be able to have a coalition type government to say, let's get through these next 3 or 4 years together. And then we can have spirited debates on policy differences, but you should never be debating on whether an election was fraudulent or not when there's no evidence that it was fraudulent, or when Trump says that he should be reinstated. There's no reason for him to be reinstated, but you got people that are kowtowing to it.
Well, and you should never be debating whether the government was attempted to be overthrown when there's clear evidence that it was. And Republicans to this day are still trying to downplay that and make it seem like it wasn't any big deal. I just noticed that Jack Del Rio, who is a coach, a defensive coordinator for the Washington football team, I think they're now named the Commanders. He came out and said it wasn't that big a deal. Really? Well, tell that to the cops that lost their lives and were maimed and had lengthy hospital stays. Tell them that it wasn't a big deal. Go say that to their face, Jack. I want you to do that.
Yeah. I saw that too. What a kangaroo court kind of thing that was to say. I mean, say that to the cops. One of the cops that's going to testify in the trial tomorrow night is a female cop that says that every time she starts to hear loud crowd noises, it takes her back.
Yeah.
Makes her flashback to when she was there because she was the first one who was attacked. So, people that want to negate this and want to act like nothing serious happened, they're just in denial of reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
So got that hearing tomorrow night. We've got, obviously we had the tragedy in Uvalde that happened. And since then, we had the tragedy in Buffalo that happened. We've had shootings in Chattanooga at a nightclub. We had shooting in the streets in Philadelphia. And so more and more mass shootings. We have Republicans resisting any kind of common sense gun safety regulation. And so it gets to that point where you got to say, if I'm the Democrats, I'm going full scorched earth in this election. If you want more shootings, then you vote Republican. If you want more, because these folks are blocking things like raising the age from 18 to 21 on purchasing an assault weapon. They're blocking an assault weapons ban, which was effective when it was passed under President Clinton. They're blocking
with Republican support when it was passed under Clinton.
Absolutely. Red flag laws, they're blocking that. They're blocking anything that's common sense when it comes to gun safety. And when you've got things like that that have almost 90% approval across the country, Democrats need to make that case and just say, look, if you want to have common sense gun safety laws, if you want to stop these mass killings, if you want to have pro-women policies that aren't trying to restrict their health care, then you got to vote for us. And they got to make that case, and they got to make it stronger. And I feel like Chuck Schumer got rope-a-doped again by the Republicans and Mitch McConnell when they're doing the stall tactic where they're negotiating and saying they're going to come up with a gun plan. It's the same thing that Tim Scott was doing with Cory Booker, where they were negotiating police reform. And then it gets to the point where they just say, no, we can't accept anything that's in this. Yeah,
they just drag it out until it's out of the news cycle. But here's the thing. This is going to be a hard thing to drag out because there have been 243 mass shootings in the U.S. already this year. And so, that's, then they're just going to continue. And so every time there's another one, we're going to, the difference between most mass shootings in Uvalde is this one was a bunch of kids. But, we've had other mass shootings where people have gone in and killed people in grocery stores, nightclubs, you name it. I did notice that Merrick Garland appointed a 7-member committee to look into the Uvalde shooting. And every day that thing gets more and more problematic. I mean, the things the cops are doing to cover their, rear ends. I mean, it's just heartbreaking. It's like, you know what? You made a mistake. You should resign because you don't deserve to be a police officer anymore and get on down the road, and, you should brace for the fact that the families are going to sue you because you didn't do your job. You're there to protect and serve, and you didn't protect. You stood out in the parking lot. You waited until you had 100 officers out there. And in the meantime, the guy's going room to room killing kids. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Without a doubt. And, it's like one of those things where, at some point, somebody's got to step up and take responsibility. Yep. I thought the Republican Party was supposed to be the party of personal responsibility.
Yep. Well, they are until they need to be.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
As Lyndon Johnson would say, they're all hat, no cattle.
Exactly right. Don't call him a cowboy till you've seen him ride.
Right. There's one other group I want to bring up, and you're going to have to help me with the name, but they're the group that took down Madison Cawthorn. I can't think of their name now, but they've turned their sights to one of my favorite members of Congress, a Colorado representative, Lauren Boebert. And she's now being investigated for her expense report, where she charged a little over 34,000 miles for reimbursement. And they say they're coming after her hard. So it's going to be interesting to see. They allege now that she used some of her campaign contributions to pay off long-standing tax liens on her restaurant. So we'll see how this is going to end up. She might end up like Mr. Trump, regretting the day she decided to run.
Yeah, absolutely. It was American Muckrakers PAC.
Yeah.
Is who it was.
Yeah, American Muckrakers. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Thanks for
it's
that.
It's kind of funny how it's like how'd they finally get Al Capone? Tax evasion, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so some of these folks, it's like it comes down to things like campaign finance and things like that finally bring them down. Yeah. But Lauren Boebert, she's a dumpster fire of problems.
Yeah, well, she's the commission redrew her district a little bit. She's got a little bit of Boulder. She's got a little bit more Pueblo, and she's got a strong primary opponent. A lot of Democrats, about 30% last count, have switched their party affiliation to vote in the upcoming Republican primary later this month, on the 18th, I believe. And so we'll see how she fares on primary night. She might be out of a job.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of primaries, I mentioned earlier we had quite a few primaries last night, and pretty straightforward. There were some surprises out in California. There was the mayoral race in Los Angeles. A little bit of a surprise there. Karen Bass, Congresswoman, came in second place to a former Republican, and Rick Caruso, who's now is a registered Democrat. He came in first, but he came in with about 42% of the vote. Karen Bass was about 37% of the vote. In California, the way their primaries work is the top two vote getters move on to the general, regardless of what that number is. So somebody could win 70 or 90% of the vote, and they would still have to go to a general election. So right. Karen Bass got her work cut out for her. And then in San Francisco, the district attorney
got recalled.
Jessica Boudin was actually recalled. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And she was a staunch progressive.
he,
Sorry.
yeah, pretty staunch progressive. You know, it is kind of interesting that some of the folks here for police reform, they kind of, as the last couple of years, they've been blamed for some of the changes in spikes in crime, but I think people are forgetting that there is a pandemic going on right now too.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of things related to that, but definitely got recalled. So some interesting things there. One of the other interesting primaries that I know you're interested in is the newly reformed first district in South Dakota, or it's Montana, I think. Actually, in Montana, Ryan Zinke, your old buddy, the former Secretary of the Interior, running for that seat, was predicted to run away with it, and he's going to go into a runoff now.
Yeah, well, let's hope he loses that runoff. So Montanans are pretty smart. You know, let's hope they see through that guy, and you know, and they like their land. So I noticed that Christy Nome, is that how you say her name? She, I don't know if people are following her, but she's putting together a record that she can run on in 2024 for president. I'm telling it, and she could be a formidable opponent because she's not towing the hardline GOP mantra. She is kind of leaning towards the middle, and she just won her. She had a primary opponent. She just won in a landslide. So
come on, you can't honestly be trying to pacify me that Christy Nome is leaning towards the middle. How is she leaning towards the middle?
I'm telling you, she's leaning towards the middle. She hasn't done some of the things, like she vetoed a transgender law that the legislator put through, and they didn't override it. She's done a couple things that the hard right is really upset with her about, but she ended up winning with big margin. I'm telling you, 2024, she's going to be somebody to be dealt with. She will get a spot on the ticket somewhere. I promise you. She'll either be the top spot or she'll be the number 2.
Everything I'm seeing says she signed the anti-transports bill.
I don't think so. I don't think that's what I read today. I'll go check that out.
Yeah, check that out. She she's got a little bit of a controversy. Our old attorney general buddy there in South Dakota, she pushed for him to be impeached and removed. The guy who killed the guy with his car.
Yep, and then denied that he did it.
And then denied that he did it for a long amount of time. But he also came forward and said that she was pressuring his department to approve a license for his daughter. So, and that he's investigating that. So there's all kinds of stuff happening there in South Dakota.
Right.
So we shall see on that. So anything else you're looking forward to in the next couple of weeks that you see on the political horizon?
Well, there's a couple of cases coming up in the Supreme Court that I'm waiting on. I'm really anxious to see how that leaked draft report shakes out in the end. I'm wondering if this threat, which I don't think it was much of a threat to Justice Kavanaugh, if that's going to, knock some sense into him and have him change his vote, or if they're going to stick with what they did and they overturned Roe v. Wade. So we'll see how it goes. But that's the main thing I'm waiting on, and we'll see how that ripple affects down the line. I also want to point out that one of my favorite candidates, John Fetterman, has bought some time on Fox News going after Dr. Oz. So thought that was pretty interesting.
Dr. Oz.
Yeah, so I'm following that race pretty close.
He's the official candidate now.
Yeah, I think that's I haven't seen how Cook has put that, but my guess is that's got a lean Democrat, if not solid Democrat. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Huge pickup opportunity there. We shall see what happens. So interesting. We'll see what happens in the hearing tomorrow night. We'll see if that changes anything when it comes to public opinion. We'll see what happens with the gun safety negotiations that are happening in the Senate right now. And then we'll wait for those cases to come out and see what happens there too. Because besides the Roe v. Wade case, there's also a gun rights case as well.
Yeah, a couple of big cases coming up. So interesting to watch.
But later this month, we've got more primaries. The 28th, we've got the primaries here in Oklahoma, where we'll see what happens in 2 U.S. Senate races. We've got Jim Inhofe, who's retiring, and there's some big time movement on that side of the fence. Kendra Horn, former Congresswoman, is running for that seat. On the Democratic side and on the Republican side, I think there's 8 candidates, 4 of them who are really viable candidates that are raising a ton of money. So we'll see what happens with those as well. So besides our governor race too.
Yeah, the only thing in Colorado besides Lauren Boebert that's of any interest is we have a new seat, and it's up for grabs in the House. So we'll see how that plays out. So, and like I said, I think ours is on the 18th.
Got it. All right. Well, everybody take care out there. Be safe, and we'll see you real soon.
Yep, sounds good. See you, everybody.